Cosmos, the Carl Sagan. Chapter 4. Heaven and Hell. The doors of heaven and hell are adjoined and identical. Equal Kanjaskakis, the last temptation of Christ. The earth is a lovely and more or less blessed place. Things change, but slowly. We can lead a full life and never personally encounter a natural disaster more violent than a storm. And so we become complacent, relaxed, and unconcerned. But in the history of nature, the record is clear. World had been devastated. Even humans have achieved the dubious technical distinction of being able to make our own disasters, both intentional or inadvertent. On the landscape of other planets, where the record of the past have been preserved, there is abundant evidence of major catastrophes. It is all a matter of time scale. An event that would be unthinkable in 100 years may be inevitable in 100 millions. Even on the earth, even in our own century, bizarre natural events have occurred. In the early morning hours of June 30th, 1908, in central Siberia, a giant firewall was seen moving rapidly across the sky. Where it touched the horizon, an enormous explosion took place. It leveled some 2,000 square kilometers of forest and burned thousands of trees in a flash fire at the impact site. It produced an atmospheric shock wave that twice circled the Earth. For 2 days afterward, there was so much fine dust in the atmosphere that one could read a newspaper at night by scattered light in the street of London, 10,000 kilometers away. The government of Russia, under the Tsar, could not be bothered to investigate so trivial an event, which, after all, had occurred far away among the backward Tungus people of Siberia. It was 10 years after the revolution, before the expedition arrived to examine the ground and interview the witnesses. These are some of the accounts they brought back. Early in the morning, when everyone was asleep in the tent, it was blown up into the air, together with the occupant. When they fell back to earth, the whole family suffered slight bruise, but Aquilina and Ivan actually lost consciousness. When they regained consciousness, they heard a great deal of noise and saw the forest blazing round them and much of it devastated. I was sitting on the porch of the house at the trading station of Banabara of breakfast time and looking toward the north. I was just raised my axe to hoop the cast when suddenly the sky was split in two, and high above the forest the whole northern part of the sky appeared to be covered with fire. At that moment I felt a great heat as if my shirt and caught fire. I wanted to pull off my shirt and throw it away, but at that moment there was a bang in the sky and a mighty crash was heard. I was thrown on the ground about 3 janes away from the porch, and for a moment I lost consciousness. My wife ran out and carried me into the hut. The crash was followed by a noise like stones falling from the sky, or guns firing. The earth trembled, and when I lay on the ground, I covered my head because I was afraid that stones might hit it. At that moment, when the sky opened, the hot wind, as from a cannon, blew past the hut from the north and left its mark on the ground. When I sat down to have my breakfast beside my plow, I heard sudden bangs as if from gunfire. My horse fell to its knee. From the north side above the forest, a flame shot up. Then I saw that the far forest had been bent over by the wind, and I saw the hurricane. I seized hold of my plow with both hands so that it would not be carried away. The wind was so strong that it carried up some of the soil from the surface of the ground, and then the hurricane drove the wall of water up the Angara. I saw it all quite clearly because my land was on a hillside. The roar frightened the horses to such an extent that some galloped off in panic, dragging the plow in different directions, and others collapsed. The carpenters, after the fire and second crashes, had crossed themselves in stupefaction, and when its third crash resounded, they fell backward from the building on the chips of wood. Some of them were so stunned and utterly terrified that I had to calm them down and reassure them. We all abandoned work and went into the village. There were a whole crowd of local inhabitants who gathered in the street in terror, talking about this phenomenon. I was in the field and had only just got one horse harness to the harrow and begun to attach another, and suddenly I heard that sounded like a single loud shot to the right. I immediately turned around and saw an elongated flaming object flying through the sky. The front part was the broader than the tall end, and its color was like fire in the daytime. It was many times bigger than the sun, but much dimmer, so that it was possible to look at it with my naked eye. Behind the flamed trail, what looks like dust, it was withered, little puffs and blue streamers was left behind from the flame. As soon as the flame had disappeared, bangs louder than shots from a gun were heard. The ground should be felt to tremble, and the window pane in the cabin were shattered. I was washing wool in the banks of the river Khan. Suddenly, a noise like the fluttering of the wings of a frightened bird are heard, and a kind of swirl came up the river. After this came a single sharp bang so loud that one of the workmen fell into the water. This remarkable occurrence is called Tunguska event. Some scientists have suggested it was caused by a piece of hurling antimatter annihilated on contact with the ordinary matter of was disappearing in a flash of gamma rays. But the absence of radioactivity at the impact site gives no support to this explanation. Others postulate that a mini black hole passed through the Earth in Siberia and out of other side, but the recorders of atmospheric shock waves show no hint of an object booming out of the North Atlantic later that day. Perhaps it was a spaceship of some unimaginably advanced extraterrestrial civilization in desperate mechanical travel, crashing in a remote region of an obscure planet. But at the site of impact, there is no trace of such a ship. Which of these ideals have been proposed? Some of them more or less seriously. Not one of them is strongly supported by the evidence. The key point of the Tunguska event is that there was a tremendous explosion, a great shock wave, an enormous forest fire, and where there is no impact crater at the site. There seemed to be only one explanation consistent with all the facts. In 1908, a piece of a comet hit the Earth. In the vast space between the planets, there are many objects, some rocky, some metallic, some icy, some composed partly of organic molecules. They range from grain of dust to irregular blocks of size of Nicaragua or Bhutan, and sometimes by accident there is a planet in the way. The Tunguska event was probably caused by an icy cometary fragment about 100 meters across, the size of a football field, weighing 1,000,000 tons, moving about 30 kilometers per second, 70,000 miles per hour. If such an impact occurred today, it might be mistaken, especially in the panning of a moment, for a nuclear explosion. The cometary impact and fireball would simulate by effect upon 1 megaton nuclear burst, including a Perseum cloud, with two exceptions. There would be no gamma radiant or radioactive fallout. Could a rare but natural event, the impact of a sizable cometary fragment, trigger a nuclear war? A strange scenario. A small comet hit the Earth, millions of us then have the response our civilization is promptly to self-destruct. It might be a good idea for us to understand the comet and collision and catastrophe a little better than we do. For example, an American Bella satellite detected an intense double flash of light from a vicinity of the South Atlantic and Western Indian Ocean on September 22, 1979. Early speculation had that it was a clandestine test of a low-yield 2 kilometers above the 6 the energy of the Hiroshima bomb nuclear weapon by South Africa or Israel. The political consequences were considered serious around the world, but what if the flash were instead caused by the impact of a small asteroid or a piece of a comet? Since one overflight in the vicinity of the flash showed not a trace of unusual radioactivity in the air, this is a real possibility and underscores the danger in the age of nuclear weapons of not monitoring impact from space better than we do. A comet is made mostly of ice, water ice, with a little methane ice and some ammonia ice. Striking the Earth's atmosphere, a modest cometary fragment would produce a great radiant fireball and a mighty blast wave, which would burn trees, level forests, and be heard around the world. But it might not make much of a crater in the ground. The ices would all be melted during entry. There would be few recognizable pieces of the comet left, perhaps only a smattering of small grains from a non-ice part of the cometary nucleus. Recently, the Soviet scientist E. Sobotovsky has identified a large number of tiny diamonds through over the Tunguska site. Such diamonds are already known to exist meteorite that have survived impact and that may originate ultimately from comets.